Welcome to Chris Parkin Shooting Sports. I've got a scope to review today. This is an Element Nexus Gen II. Now this one is in the 4-25 by 50 specification, first focal plane. Now I have reviewed one of these scopes before, but this one is the minutes of angle version, and it's got the APR-1C reticle. Now the APR-1C reticle is the slightly simpler of the two MOA reticles available, but I actually prefer it because there's a bit more free space around it. When you're shooting at long distance, you've got more room to actually see where your bullet strike or your pellet strike or whatever it is. But let's go through some of the details of it. Now this scope is first focal plane, so to those who don't know quite what first focal plane means, is if the reticle is looking like it gets bigger and smaller as you zoom in and out, that's first focal plane. But what it does mean is that it stays in absolute perfect correlation with the clicks on your scope, and also you can read your target without any worry about what magnification you set on. You can have it in both milliradians or minutes of angle. As I said, this is the minutes of angle version. Let's have a look and see what comes in the box. So we have the scope, we have a neoprene cover, we have a small box here, we have a sunshade, and let's discuss what's going on in those. So scope, as you'd expect, that's what we're going to focus on mainly. We'll look at that in a moment. 3-inch sunshade, might use that, might not. It's December, there's not really a lot of sun to worry about, but we shall see. Inside here we've got the ghost ring adapter. Now that, I'll show you what that does in a moment. We've also got a little plug there. Now that is in case you don't want to use the throw lever. Now I'm going to be leaving the throw lever on there, but you can remove those and put that little blank screw in there instead. I think throw levers are a great design attribute that a lot of scopes come with now, and there's something I use a lot. We've also got an Allen key there which will help us adjust the turrets and set them up for 0. Also in here we have a secondary iris. Now this iris or aperture will screw in to the front of the scope, and as any photographer among you will know, the iris actually increases the depth of field in bright conditions. So for example, if before you could only focus from 50 meters to 75 meters and anything beyond or before that was out of focus, well the iris might just give you a little bit more depth of field to cope with that. But that's something you'll have to experiment with and use if you want to. Again, it's for use in good light conditions because of course it does block some of the light coming in, but it doesn't actually obstruct the field of view. But that's an intricacy of camera usage and generally the iris or aperture factors. We've also got a clip-on lens cleaning cloth. I'll bob that back in there. The ghost ring I'll show you, like I said, that is the screw for the throw lever, and that is the Allen key for the turret. So let's have a little look at the scope now. Just move these out of the way. Just take that off. Right. The ghost ring, for starters, is to go on here. So if you don't want to use that turret in a capped way, you can take the ghost ring out of this bag, and that will fit very neatly onto those threads there, and you won't see those threads again. So it looks like it's an externally adjustable turret, and that's how it was always designed, and that's effectively now what it is. So I will use that because it just makes it a little bit quicker and easier when I'm setting up and zeroing the rifle scope, but you can choose as to whether you want to use that or not. Now, main features to look at on the scope. It's a 4-25 times scope, which means it goes from 4 times to 25 times magnification. It's first focal plane, so the reticle will grow or shrink in correspondence with that. 50mm objective lens, 30mm main tube. We've got externally adjustable turrets, which are easy to operate with your hands. You can set those up with the 0 stop as well. Parallax adjustability goes down as close as 10 yards all the way up to infinity, which means you can use this on air rifles, rimfires, centerfires, whichever you need. It will handle a recoil, it's fine. And this one is made in Japan, which comes with all the reassurances of Japanese engineering, quality, optics, everything to go with it. And it is a very nice scope to use. As I say, I have used one before. Looking at the back end, as we said, we've got the zoom ring here. It's very smooth. There's no perception of any internal mechanical noise or movement from the helical mechanisms within. And as I said, there's a throw lever, which does make things faster and easy to adjust. And on the back end, we've got a fast focus eyepiece to make sure the reticle is in perfect, crisp, clean focus. Click values on this one are 1/4 MOA. So if we go down to 0 here, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 clicks per minute of angle. Now, whether you want to go minutes of angle or milliradians is totally down to user preference. I am personally a milliradians guy, but If you choose and you prefer minutes of angle, that's absolutely fine. There's no real detriment to either. Technically speaking, the click values are a little bit finer with minutes of angle, so if you want that ultra precision shot placement, that might be better for you. But on the other hand, if you're doing long distances and you're doing fast adjustment, those centimetre clicks on the milliradians version do make things a little bit faster. Now, as well as the zero stop, there is a rotation indicator, and you can see that little lever there. And if I go all the way around through the first turn, can you just see how that pops one side to the other? And maybe hold that a little bit closer as you go past, and it shows you in the second rotation. So that, combined with the zero stop on this scope, means you're never going to get lost when you're adjusting for long distance shots. Windage, same, you've got minutes of angle, adjustment, quarter MOA clicks, and if we start zero there in the centre, we can go all the way around. We've got 10 minutes in either direction. Looking at the elevation turret, we've actually got 25 minutes of angle per rotation, and then you go into the second turn, and the overall travel is listed in the specifications. So let's go through some of the specifications now of overall capability of this scope. I'm just going to put the neoprene cover on, just show you how the neoprene cover works. Obviously when it's on your rifle, that's going to go on there, stretches over the top, and it's going to protect that. And you know what, it's not often protects us bumps and bangs when you're walking around. It's usually when you're putting them in and out your gun cabinets and things like that that scopes get marked. So I'll cut through this because it's got very good instructions on how to set the scope up, but really what we're predominantly interested in is the actual specifications. These are all listed on the Element Optics website along with the different reticle options too, and I'll put a link for that in the description. Now, if we find the page here, now if we look on the back cover, here you can see we've got all the critical specifications. So it's 4 to 25 times magnification, 30mm main tube with a 50mm objective lens. The exit pupil goes from 7.1 down to 2mm as you rise up through the magnification range. Eye relief is 77 to 92mm, so it does change a little bit as you zoom through it, but never going longer than 92 does mean it's a little bit more appropriate for most rifles where you don't need magnum eye relief beyond the 100mm, because that can sometimes be a little bit too much space on smaller rifles. So actually I like the specification available here. Field of view is listed both in imperial and metric sizes. 100 yards, you've got 29.2 to 4.7 feet, which is at 100 metres, 9.7 to 1.6 metres width. Click value, as I said, is quarter MOA or 10th milliradian, depending on which one you go for, and overall elevation adjustment range is 100 minutes of angle or 29 milliradians. Just to give you a rough example, a Commodore Garden 308 is usually somewhere between 32 and 36 minutes of angle between 100 yards here and a 1,000 yard shot. So that gives you an idea. This has got a lot of capability with it. Windage adjustment range is 40 minutes of angle or 11.6 milliradians, and a minimum parallax is 10 yards or 10 meters. Not quite the same. 10 yards is 9 meters or 10 meters is 11 yards, but you know, we can live with that. Overall length 13.8 inches, which is 350 millimeters, and the overall weight is 30.7 ounces, which is 870 grams. So let's put this on a rifle, let's go shooting. So, as you can see, got out yesterday shooting the rifle. Dave and I had a great time shooting it, and very enjoyable, easy to set up, easy to zero. Some quite simple features which make it very easy to use, and especially good if you don't want overcomplication. But let me tell you a bit more about it. I used Element Optics XT scope rings to put it on. These are high versions. Now I did need to move the scope quite a long way forward because of the 92mm eye relief, but it is a rimfire rifle, and rimfires just physically don't have as long an action length to mount scopes on, so sometimes the scope looks a little bit too big for the gun, but it's not. It's really the fact that the rifle is quite small for the scope, to be fair, and at maximum 92mm eye relief you've actually got a really nice setup with this rifle, and you also get the fact that it's not too long, because if you go to 101mm, generally you run out of a lot of space on rimfire rifles, and you tend to have to sort of crane your head back a little bit if you can't get it far enough forward. Now this has a 25 MOA rail on it, and the rail is extended, so you have got more space with it. It's just one thing to bear in mind when you choose any rifle scope, that lots of eye relief can sound good. Somewhere around 90mm of eye relief, unless you need magnum eye relief because you have got lots of recoil, will give you the best ergonomic setup, and it will also give you a slightly more relaxed eye box. And the eye box generally is when we're talking about this, that you've got your perfect eye relief there, but depending on which shooting position you're in, you know, if you're prone or standing or sitting, kneeling, your head will move backwards and forwards slightly, so you don't really want too critical an eye box, and this scope has got a nice forgiving eye box as well. Now, the eye relief does change a little bit as you change your magnification, but it's actually not noticeable. Some older scopes used to be really noticeable, but this one is absolutely spot on at 92mm. Eye relief at 92mm is so versatile, it will suit 99% of rifles, to be honest, unless you really have got massive recoil, which for a more target-oriented scope isn't likely to happen, because very heavy recoiling rifles are going to be very heavy, and they're probably going to have a muzzle brake on them as well, so it's not like shooting an African caliber sporting rifle. Eyepiece focus works beautifully. You get a lovely sharp reticle picture. A little bit more about the reticle in a second. I like the throw lever on the scope's magnification collar here. It's quick, it's easy to adjust, and you can take that out and replace it with the screw if you want to, but I'm going to leave it in. It was supplied in, and I think they're a great attribute to scopes. And that one, it's not too long either, so it's not interfering with the bolt handle, and you've got just enough to just grab with a fingertip or thumb and just give you that extra leverage to turn it round. There's plenty of scope tube free for your rings to go on, makes the space up for your eye relief setup on Picatinny rail or regular rifle, and the actual anodizing on this scope, it's not too rough either, so it doesn't tend to pick up all the dust from your skin. Having a 50mm objective lens is a great compromise for a predominantly daylight usage scope. Gives you a nice bright picture, but you haven't got excessive bulk to worry about like you would need on an extremely low light hunting scope, or one where you really do have to push those optical limits. Now the illuminated reticle works quite nicely. It's got 10 settings, and you use it with a push button in the center here. So you hold that down for a second, the reticle comes on, and then click, 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 changes it through the 10 intensity settings until it gets to the top one. It'll flash, and then it'll start to move back down. Again, longer hold will switch it off. It doesn't have an automatic switch off, but you'll generally get used to it anyway. And to replace the battery, you just unscrew the cap there, and the battery fits in here. Now it isn't actually supplied with a battery, but it does use the regular CR2032 battery, so those are fairly easily available. That fastens back like that, and there you go. While we're here, parallax control was fast, it was easy to use, it's easy to grip hold of as well, because you haven't got any sort of supplementary external dials for the illumination with that push button, so you can get plenty of grip on that, easy to turn, there's no perception of any internal mechanical movement or anything, and there doesn't appear to be any backlash either, so you get a really nice crisp image. And as I said at the start of the video, it goes down to 10 yards, so you have got a huge amount of versatility for pretty much any type of rifle you might want to mount this on. Now, looking at the turrets, these, as we say, are the minutes of angle turrets. You can have this whole scope in a completely identical setup, but with milliradians if that's your preference. First focal plane, first focal plane. I do think that's the great system to use because you get perfect correlation between your click values and your reticle, regardless of magnification setting. Now, zeroing the rifle scope proved no problem at all. Now, it's advertised as a toolless turret, and a toolless turret is very simple because you don't need any tools. Now, the clicks on the turret themselves, they're good, they're tactile, you can just about hear them, you can feel them too, so you can make dial corrections without necessarily watching what you're doing. You've got nice white engraved dial markings, so it's easy to see them, even if you've got dodgy older eyes like me when you're losing your short distance vision. It's easy to pick up 7, 8, 9, 10, etc., and you can make sure you're exactly on target. Now, as I say, this one's minutes of angle. I'm used to all my data in milliradians, but you know, whatever you choose will suit you. I just had to sort of do a bit of mental arithmetic when I was doing some of my scope changes to try and remember what was what in minutes rather than milliradians. Anyway, looking at this turret, I really like the way it sets up and adjusts because you have got 5 clicks below the 0 stop. So you can see those 5 clicks below that 0 stop there. And with a 0 stop, you of course never get lost. And as we showed you before, go all the way around. The little marker will flick to the second stage, the second rotation, and then you go all the way through to the end of travel. Now here, from actual 0 at 50 meters, I've got 48 minutes of angle still available. But this is a 25 MOA rail, so it's giving me a bit of a head start anyway, but it does mean I can dial all the way back down to my 50 meter mark for my accurate shots at shorter distance. Now, when you want to set this turret up, you know, for example, if it arrives like this and you zero it and it's there, I'm going to lose my 0 now, but all you have to do is unscrew that dial at the top there, lift that off and put this back on marked at 0. And then you've got your 0 stop. So everything's integrated. Now, I have lost my 0 now, but I've finished shooting with this rifle, so it doesn't particularly matter to me. But of course, once you're set up like that, you cannot get lost. You know, you've always got your 0 stop at -5 clicks, and there you go. So happy days. And you've no small tools required. You've no small parts to drop off and lose. Now, the great thing about a toolless turret is if you do forget the tools and you are, for some reason, needing extra elevation, you can, you know, take the turret apart with fingertip in seconds and make the corrections you need, and that makes life very easy. Now similarly, windage works in the same way. Once you've got it zeroed, you undo the knurled cap on the end, just pop that down, take that off and put that back on marked at 0, as you can see here, and then that will then give you your clicks left and right off center. Once you've done that, pop that back on there. And unless you change anything significant, that's it. The rifle scope's set up and you can use it as you like. As I say, I put the ring on here to cover this thread, but you can leave that as a capped turret if you want, or a capped dial, so to speak. I think I've hidden the dial cap somewhere back in here. We'll have to just look through that somewhere. Found it. And that will go back on there. If that's your preference, I think, to be honest, it's horses for courses. Whichever you prefer will work for you, and it's a really nice looking scope because, as I say, it's not picking up all the dust off your fingertips when anything rubs against it. Now finally, looking at the reticle, I really did like this reticle. My regular viewers will well know that I am not a fan of enormously busy reticles, and we need to just get the reticle chart here, and that is the reticle. I've taken a photograph through it. Now do bear in mind a photograph taken through a rifle scope is not always a true perfect representation because it's very hard to get them to correctly focus, whereas your eye will focus instantly and it will do the job for the camera in that respect. But this is the reticle inside, and it's got lovely clean spaces. It's got nice hash marks. They're not too small. There's not too many of them. It's easy to see them, easy to read them. And as I said, being first focal plane means you can dial or aim off with either windage or elevation exactly what you need, and the clicks do match perfectly. I shot multiple distances out to 150 yards, just plinking really. I wanted to go out again today, but it's foggy, so I can't, because I can't see anything beyond about 40 meters anyway. But this is the reticle I would enjoy shooting because, importantly, If you go for the busier reticle with a lot of stadia in these lower quadrants here, it can be harder to see your fall of shot. And as well as hitting target, which is very nice, it's very, very important if you can see where you have missed the target, especially in the world of PRS where you're looking at reactive steel gongs. You know, you want to see if that bullet splashed high left, low right, whatever, because you can then make an instantaneous dial off or aim off correction with your reticle. And that is why I love this reticle. It is my favourite type. I would go for the milliradian scope option, but again, just personal choice. But it's got just the right number and balance of size, weighting, and correction values you need to use for those shots. The other thing I would say is that the illumination system does give you a nice crisp illumination pattern. It doesn't glare, it's not overly bright, and it won't kind of bleed out and give you a fuzzy looking reticle, because sometimes in good light, if you turn the illuminated reticle on, it can actually make the reticle look quite a lot bulkier, and it's not actually beneficial. Okay, if it's contrasting with the target you're using, that can be very good, but if you're on a white target with a black reticle, for example, you know, leaving the illumination off gives you the best contrast between those two colours for the finest precision aiming solution. Well, I hope you've enjoyed watching that review. Generally speaking, the Element Optics Nexus Gen II is a nice scope to use. The control layout's very good, it's ergonomically good, the eye relief's not too long, there's plenty of space to mount it on the tube, the turrets work well, you can choose it in either minutes or milliradians depending on your preference with exactly matching reticles for what you want. You can go for the simple reticle option, you can go for the more complicated reticle option, and the illumination system works perfectly. So, generally overall, I'm going to give this scope an absolute thumbs up because I've enjoyed using it, I found it easy to use, and that to me is a critical factor because I don't have scopes for long, so I want a scope that I can just jump into, get using straight away, and having the toolless turrets and things like that is a genuine benefit for both short-term and long-term users in my opinion. Right, well please like, subscribe, comment, click the notification bell and keep track of my regular uploads. Thank you for watching, bye for now.